the light and the joy of this movie, that it just like penetrates through whatever dark cloud hovers over your life, or it's just truthful and authentic and sincere.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're all having a wonderful day today. My name is Talal, and you're watching the Popcorn and Soda Podcast, the show where we discuss all things movies, pop culture, and so much more. As always, I want to thank each and every one of you for making me a small part of your day. On today's show, we're joined by a very special guest, coming right off the heels of a very successful Toronto International Film Festival with a role in the People's Choice Award winning film, The Life of Chuck. We're joined by the very talented Annalise Basso. How are you, Annalise?
That was quite an introduction. Thank you. Thank you. I'm doing great. As you said, coming off the heels of Tiff and people's response to the movie, it's just been incredible. So I'm feeling pretty great.
I love it. And again, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here on the show today. And like you said, right, it's been quite the month for you. So if you kind of had to like sum up your September, what would you say?
Summing up the September. I mean, we're only halfway through it, right? So I guess there's room for it to change. But as of now, September has been a month of gratitude. Gratitude for especially the audience in TIFF, because I had never seen it before with that amount of people. I mean, the Princess of Wales Theatre is 1,900 seats, and people were laughing at parts where I hadn't laughed before, and they brought joy. And Mike had this whole introduction before the film started about the history of the word and joy, and how it means not getting joy, but bringing joy. And so people brought joy to it, and that's what this movie is about. So I'm really grateful for the audiences and their responses to it, and get gratitude.
That's a great way to sum it up. And I would say, gratitude is another word I would kind of sum up for mine, because getting the chance to watch this film like at the premiere, because I was there, I got to see everyone. It was just such an amazing experience and something I wasn't expecting, like just how emotional this film was. And just, it really pulls in your heartstrings, and it just really puts things into perspective about moments in life and, what's destiny and what's not. But I had a great time with it. So, before we deep dive into all things The Life of Chuck and just what a great film it was, I'm really interested in your story, Annalise, and how we got to where we are today. So, where does this kind of begin for you, and what made you want to be an actor?
Well, it started with my older sister. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and so I'm going all the way to the back, to the way to the beginning. And she started modeling, and I just wanted to tag along with older sister at one of the little local St. Louis fashion shows. And an agent approached my mom. She's like, "Would your girls be interested?" And my dad, who's a very pragmatic lawyer, was like, "As long as it doesn't interfere with their schooling, like, sure, go have fun." And so then we started booking, and my brother wanted to join in as well, because he's like, "How much can you make on a commercial?" So he then joined in on the fun. And it started, and then it just didn't stop. And so I guess how I got here was, it always was just there. Acting was a job, and I didn't really have the space or the capacity to develop any gratitude or appreciation for it. It was just something that I always did. And I sometimes, unfortunately, things have to be taken away for you to recognize their value. And over COVID, over the strike, it was just this wild time of, I need a creative outlet. I need something. And right before the strike, Mike and I had this meeting, and he was like, "I have a role for you." And usually when people say that in Hollywood, they don't mean it. But Mike does. He's a man of his word. And so he said, "I have a role for you, and you're going to be dancing, and it's with Tom Hiddleston." And I was like, "Okay, great. Yeah, that sounds great. Sure." And the strike happened, and I thought that too, the door had closed. And then when it actually happened, when I was in London rehearsing with Tom, and here working with Mandy and dancing, which is the thing that I wanted to do most. Dancing is my happy place. It's my passion. And I'm not a professional dancer. Tom isn't either, but we both share this mutual love of joy. And I mean, when I had that mutual love of dance, sorry, and joy, who doesn't love joy? But when I had that meeting with Mike, he did open the conversation with, can you dance? And I was like, Mike, I've been doing it my whole life and I love it. And so that sort of opened the door to the life of Chuck. And when I said it was my happy place, I think those were the key words, because life of Chuck is about joy and the beauty and the tragedy of life. And at that time, I was looking for a reason why I was doing this, looking for the joy. And because I was seeking after it, I found it. And Mike gave me this opportunity to create joy and dance. And I mean, Tom Hiddleston, it's like, it's hard to just be like sad in that sort of situation. But anyway, that's like,
well, what else can you ask for, right? Mike Flannagan, Tom Hiddleston, dance, joy. It's like the perfect trifecta right there, right? So you know what I love about this film? It's a Mike Flannagan film, but it's so different compared to some of his past projects. Yet his vibe and tone is kind of like all over the film. And it's unique as to how it's shot and what the actual concept of the film is. Because watching it as an audience member, I was like trying to figure out where this is going to go, not having read Stephen King's story prior. So it was definitely a movie that kind of really caught me off guard for all the right reasons. And, you worked with Mike before. So what attracted you specifically to this character of Janice? I know you mentioned all the external things with Tom Hiddleston, the dance, but is there something about Janice that just resonated with you?
I don't want to spoil anything, but she starts out just having the worst day. I mean, it like life, sometimes you're here and then in the next moment you can be here. And then her choice to choose joy in a moment where she could have so easily surrendered to her suffering and the sadness, that really inspired me. And of course, I mean, working with Mike again and watching him evolve and grow has really inspired me as an artist, because we worked on Oculus together, and that was the beginning of a really deep, powerful friendship. And just watching him go from, because Oculus, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's really sad.
I have. Yeah, it's got its moments in there. Yeah,
pretty hopeless. And then for him to create Life of Chuck, I mean, it's a cynical world, but he was very clear about what he wants his legacy to be for his children, and his legacy in the world, which is, there's always hope. You just have to find it.
Look, that's such a beautiful way of putting it. And Mike likes to work with a lot of the similar actors in his TV shows and films. How much easier does that become as well when you're so used to your surroundings in such an intimate film like this?
It's exactly as you said. It's just intimate. And there's something about art where, I mean, if it's coming from a truthful place, you're put in a very vulnerable place. So what Mike does is he encourages everybody he works with to be fearless. And he creates that safe environment to just take risks and be honest and be sincere. And so that's what that's like. There is a little bit of pressure though, because Mike, although I've worked with him, I'm like, I don't want to let him down, because I care about him. I care about his art. I want to do it justice. So there's intimacy and there's safety. And there's also just a culture of excellence in pursuing the best possible version of what something could be. And there's no right or wrong in Mike's world. There's just what's true and what's false. And I really respond to that sort of environment, because again, it feels like play. It feels like play.
We're going to kind of circle back to this. I know you mentioned it earlier about the dance scene. And again, that is one of the biggest highlights of the film. And just just how epic of a scene that was, you dancing alongside Tom Hiddleston, who plays Chuck Krantz in the film. It's such a great scene, and the audience is all in it. The energy was rocking. It's hard to watch that scene without a big smile on your face. And you guys just made it look so effortless with how well you danced along each other. So let's kind of get to the bare bones of that. Like, what was the process, the rehearsal period like, especially when you're undertaking such a massive scene in the movie?
I started rehearsing with Mandy Moore and her assistant choreographer, Jonathan. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I think it's Jonathan Red. He's Italian. But anyway, Jonathan and Mandy, they were working with me here in LA about a month out, and that training schedule was pretty rigorous. And I had to learn, again, I've been dancing my whole life, but I hadn't learned swing before. I hadn't learned, what was the other style? Like polka. And those were challenging. I mean, new rhythms coming into the body. It was pretty intimidating, but again, man, the mutual thread through all of this is just joy. And Mandy and Jonathan and Tom and I all had this mutual love of dance and this joy that we get from it. And so that made it a lot easier. And so we started training here in LA. And then 2 weeks before we shot in Alabama, I went to London with Mandy and Taylor, PQ, the drummer, and we rehearsed in London as well for, I think it was like 6 hours a day, just in the studio every day. And then to Alabama, and then we rehearsed again for a week up to shooting. And then the shooting of it, we did it top to tail for 4 or 5 days straight. I forget if we shot it 4 or 5 days, but it was, but I never got sick of it. That was the wild part of this, is you hear a song that many times, you do those steps that many times, and it felt new and different. And there were discoveries happening in every take, in every step. And I think that has a lot to do with what Mandy and Jonathan created.
No, I swear Tom Hiddleston just seems like the coolest dude on the planet. Like he's such this like supernova of energy, just a great dancer, such a personality. How is it like having Tom as a dance partner and just Tom the person in between those long sessions of rehearsal?
He, after dancing for hours, or just he went through so many shirts on set because we were like just sweating the work that we were putting into this dance. Oh my gosh. And he still had the energy in between takes to go to people and be like, "Hi, I'm Tom. What's your name? Oh, it's lovely to meet you." Just to the background, talking them up and being kind and generous and just giving, giving, giving. And that's the kind of person Tom is. And, we would geek out about Shakespeare, and you think that someone of his caliber would just, put up the walls, and in between each take he'd go and he'd separate himself. But even with me, there was a profound sense of care and thoughtfulness. And, I've wanted to work in theater. That's been a new discovery of mine. And he was like, you will be Juliet. Don't worry about it. Like that will happen for you. And just over the course of this past year, I got really close on a theatrical production of Romeo and Juliet, and it didn't end up working out, but I got close, and I was so happy to make it that far. And I told him that, and he took me in his arms, and he was like, "See, I knew you could do it. All joy and honor." That was the little joke, not the joke, but I guess the saying or the mantra. In between takes, we would just, or right before a take would start, we would look at each other and be like, "All joy and honor." Going in, no, but I mean, it obviously wasn't like going into war, but when you create art, there's a sort of violence and a battle going on between the joy and the suffering, and you want it to come from an authentic place, the joy, but meanwhile, like my toenails are falling off, and the blisters and blisters and blisters, and the blood in my shoes, like, and then Tom practically danced holes through his shoes, but still the joy came, and I don't have a rational explanation for that. I really don't.
Awesome. Well, hey, listen, positive vibes to the universe that Juliet role comes to play, because, absolutely, we got to manifest these things. So I love it that, you're right there, and, next time I'm sure it's going to happen. So that's awesome. So when you watched the dance scene for the first time, what was your reaction?
The perfectionist in me was like, "Oh, I wish my arm would have been, but taking myself out of it and taking that voice out of it, I'm so happy, because again, that voice is like, "Oh, I'm looking at it from the point of I guess, a professional dancer, and I'm not that, and it's not what the movie's about. It's just about indulging joy." And so naturally, I was one of the one of the people in the audience with just a big goofy smile painted on my face, and I couldn't help it. And this was just a culmination of so many people's just their sweat and blood and passion and tears. And in between, going back to just one question of just the training process, I've been training with many dance teachers here in LA, and that's originally the reason why I moved from New York to here, is just to be here for dance. And then Mike was like, hey, do you dance? And I'm like, that's what a coincidence. I'm here to just do that because it makes me so happy. And I would not have been able to take such pride in what I created and what I was able to do had it not been for Mandy, had it not been for my teacher, Miss Anahit, who's been teaching me ballet ever since I was little. And we both knew that I wasn't going to be a ballerina, but again, mutual love of dance and ballet. And so she continues to teach me in the laundry room of her apartment building to this day. And I mean, salsa teachers and people who just like took me under their wing to be like, let me show you, let me provide you some direction. And, so I'm really grateful to all the teachers in my life.
But I love that. I think that's so honest and sincere of you to say, because I was like, when I watched it for the first time in that premiere and seeing that dance scene, it's just, kind of pops in your head. Having spoken to so many creatives, you guys are all so like perfectionists, and the littlest thing that the audience wouldn't notice, like you guys would. And it just reminded me of that Ryan Gosling quote he made like a while back about La La Land, and how there's still that one thing that he did that still kind of haunts him in one of the dance part scene. So I'm happy that you're able to kind of have perspective that, you know what, I'm kind of looking at it from the view of just the audience and the character in the movie as well. So I think that's awesome. September 6th comes along. It's the world premiere at TIFF. How was that day for you?
It was a whirlwind because there were lots of interviews. We were doing so much press that day, and there was just this energy in the air of, okay, this is happening. It's coming out. People were nervous too. And I mean, just because Life of Chuck sets itself aside from a lot of other projects and a lot of, I guess, just the narrative right now and the mirror of despair in the art world, just like, oh, look at how chaotic and miserable things are, and look at how bad people can be. And Life of Chuck sets itself aside for a number of reasons, but also coming from Mike and Stephen King, there was a, are we going to meet people's expectations? Are they going to be disappointed? And it turned out that, everybody was really surprised. And I was I was surprised by their surprise and very relieved. But yeah, the whole day was just, we were waiting for the big moment, and the big moment came. And naturally, carpets are always just so awkward because I put me in front of a camera and I'll say lines, put me on a stage, I'll recite Shakespeare, whatever. But just when you're on a carpet and
Yep.
and there's nothing to say, it's so awkward. And every time I travel, I get little acne breakouts. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to pretend like this is the last carpet that I ever walk. And like, hopefully someone out there, if they see, how puffy I was from travel or acne, whatever, and I was still able to be comfortable with myself. Like, anybody can be on a carpet with their perfect skin and their perfect dress and their hair just right and feel like $1 million. But if things are going wrong, and if you still choose to be like, you know what, this is who I am, and I'm just gonna roll with it. Hopefully, I don't know if there are any people out there who struggle with skin or hair, saw that and you're like, okay, all right, she's fine. I'm fine. It's fine. It's all good. Next question.
You know what? Like you mentioned it earlier, like the Princess of Wales Theatre here in Toronto is such like an amazing, iconic theater, and it's got that energy and that prestige almost to it, but it's also so intimate in this little space. And just seeing all of you there on the stage together, was that like the first time all of you kind of were on the stage together,
Yes.
or meeting each other?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right on, right on.
And the first time I had seen Karen since we did Oculus, and she looks the exact same, but pregnant. And she looked at me and she's like, "You look the same, but longer." It's like, yeah, I grew, but they put you in a time capsule, but meanwhile I'm older, longer.
Well, hey, you all look lovely and beautiful in your amazing dresses and your suits. And it was just I would honestly say it's one of the best experiences I personally had at the entire festival. Just covering the festival as press, I think there's a few movies where you kind of forget about that and you're just kind of a movie fan and just
Mhm.
enjoying it. And this is one of those movies where I just loved it. And I'm
Very
like,
cool.
forget this press facade. I'm just a movie fan at heart. And just, we're all creatives just trying to express ourselves in some way, shape, or form. So I loved it in that sense. And, the cherry on top, right? Life of Chuck wins the People's Choice Award at TIFF. It's just like this
Mhm.
prestigious honor, and especially what it's done for past films that have won that award. So how exciting was that for you when you heard the news of that?
That was, I think, this past Sunday, or maybe it was, I don't know, it's just time exists in a void now. But the morning that everybody found out, I woke up to my phone just like vibrating off the nightstand, and people were like, "Have you seen? Have you seen? Have you seen?" And I was like, "Oh wow, it won the People's Choice." Well, wait, like there was because I've never been to TIFF before. I didn't know what the legacy was of the films that are nominated for that award, and so we're keeping our fingers crossed. And regardless of whether or not it goes through the award circuit, just what I hope for is for people to have the experience that you did, is just you set aside whatever facade, you set aside whatever you're dealing with in your life or whatever, and just the light and the joy of this movie, that it just like penetrates through whatever dark cloud hovers over your life, or it's just truthful and authentic and sincere. And I hope that people respond to the power of that.
Love it. And lastly, is to kind of put a bow on everything. If you had to sum up your entire experience on this film, like what's something you take away from the life of Chuck that you want to take with you going forward?
I'll be asking myself, what can I bring to this, to the world, either through my art or just by showing up in a space? What can I bring to this as opposed to what can I get from this? I had an attitude about my career and about my life that was just, I've invested X, so I should get Y back. And with art, I've realized that it's not a transactional relationship, and being human and the kindness, you can't, you just have to give it, and you have to be able to release it as well. But going back to the original answer, which is what can I bring to this as opposed to what can I get from it? That's an attitude that I will continue to embrace in my art, in life. And I hope this movie inspires other people to think that way too, because I think that's what the heart of the movie is, I mean, at least bringing joy. Like, how can I bring joy into the situation? If you're an accountant, if you work like a 9 to 5, or if you're, I don't know, doing something that the world has said, oh, that's mundane. Like, no, there's artistry to find, there's beauty to find in it. And find what brings you joy, but also find how you can bring joy into the world, no matter what you're doing. You can just be standing in a space, and you can find a way to bring joy into it.
Beautifully said. Annalise, thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. And again, congratulations on the film. I absolutely loved it. Your performance was a highlight. I cannot wait to watch it again personally. And even more so, I'm looking forward to watching it again with like a mass audience when the movie does come out. And
Yeah.
because it's just a very special, intimate film. I wish you all the best and really look forward to having you back on the show to discuss your next project.
Thank you. Thank you. Me too. Hopefully it's a dancing one,
Hope-
or
or
theater.
Juliet, who knows?
Oh, yeah.
Fingers crossed. Awesome. Thank you.